on this episode of the On Pace podcast.
People are always going to do the work. And I was in Austin a couple weeks ago at an HR and L&D conference. And I mean, these are large companies that are way further along than we are at SmartBank at their adoption of AI and technology, where I'm talking about Disney and Johnson & Johnson and IKEA. I mean, Walmart, large companies. And every single one of them was like, you have to remember it's all about people. Like they all said that.
You're listening to the On Pace podcast, and I'm your host, James Fuller. As a banker by day, I've been serving people for over 20 years, and helping others is one of the things that I love most. While banking is my day job, other pleasures include being a husband, dad, musician, runner, and most recently, a private pilot. My goal in life is to be an example of the best husband, dad, and Christian that my wife can be thankful for and my son can look up to. Not to mention, I want to be able to keep up with him for at least a few more years. This podcast was created with one goal in mind, and that is to help and inspire others. I want the On Pace podcast to be motivational, encouraging, and educational. We will discuss topics of both personal and business nature, as well as interview individuals from various walks of life that have achieved some amazing things, all while overcoming challenges they faced and showing how they were able to build endurance. I encourage you to buckle up and enjoy the ride. Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to the On Pace podcast. Welcome back to the On Pace podcast. I'm your host, James Fuller, right here at the mic, and so thankful to have you tuned in. This is the 29th episode, so we're knocking on the door of 30, and we're going to hit that number very, very soon. Got some great guests lined up around the corner, so stay tuned for that. But I want to thank you for listening to this episode, and we've got some listeners that have listened to every episode, and I can see some of the stats from around the world. It's pretty neat to see how far the small On Pace podcast is reaching. But I do want to thank you for listening. If you would like to follow us, you can follow us on all the major social media platforms, so Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, however you'd like to follow, you can follow. So the On Pace podcast on Facebook, and then it's on.pace for Instagram. You can shoot me an email at theonpacepodcast@icloud.com. And then if you'd like to follow the YouTube channel, it is Fuller Runs. So that's the handle for YouTube, and love to have you follow on any of those means. So get on over there, follow, like, subscribe, whatever you'd like to do, and get to listening to more episodes of the On Pace podcast. The great thing about today's episode is I have a really good friend and a coworker that is choosing to join us today, and I'm excited to finally get this podcast episode recorded. And so I would like to introduce the guest that we have with us today. He's no stranger if you are around the SmartBank world. He is the vice president and the senior manager of learning and development. He's based at our corporate office there in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's experienced human resources leader with over 10 years of building strategic partnerships and business leaders in the retail, healthcare, and banking industry. And last but not least, I'm going to mention that he is the co-host of the Smart Voices podcast, which is SmartBank's own internal podcast for associates. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's guest, Corey Burdette. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, James. Good night. I can tell already you're a way better host than me. We'll start there. And secondly, you've definitely been on LinkedIn. That was like verbatim. If someone went to my LinkedIn profile, it's been a while since I've looked at that, but like spot on, man, spot on.
Well, with today's podcast being on AI, I'd love to be able to tell you that AI pulled it all in, but no, I did manually go copy and paste that over so I could share it with the listeners. So
very nice. Very nice.
So I'll let you expound upon that. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and also how you kind of navigated. It said that you had been in retail, healthcare, and now banking. I'd love to kind of know how your route led you through those to finally end in banking.
Yeah, it's not a long or really fun or enjoyable story, I guess, to other folks, or really to me. It's pretty short and to the point, but Went to school here in Tennessee and took an internship at a local company called Weigel's. They're a local C-store, and took a job at their at their corporate office and worked with Becca Boyd, who's our chief people officer now at SmartBank. And Becca really gave me the opportunity of a lifetime to kind of get my foot in the door in HR. And I took an internship with her there, turned into a full-time opportunity to kind of get into recruiting and employee relations and just everything from an HR generalist kind of standpoint. And then she left, went to SmartBank. I left and got into healthcare and went to Covenant Health, which is a really large organization locally in East Tennessee. They've got about 10,000 employees and over 10 hospitals in East Tennessee, and spent a year or two there. And then Becca recruited me to come over to SmartBank, and I've been over here for, 7 or 8 years now. So it's been a fun ride and really good company to work for. And I don't know, I never thought I'd be in HR, I think, when I started, but now that I'm in it, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, and what's interesting is, I don't know how long you had been, but 7 or 8 years would put you around the same time that we were acquired by SmartBank. So we were acquired in 2018, and I do remember you being there, present on site whenever we made the transition and did all of the interviews from Southern Community over to SmartBank. So that was kind of my first introduction to Corey.
Yeah, it's been good. We've done, 6 or 7 acquisitions since I've been there. Kind of slowed down on that front now, but the acquisition with you guys, bringing you on, was, a fantastic opportunity and has boded well for the bank, and I think for you as well in Tullahoma. So it's been a joy to get to work with you and a lot of associates that have gone through that acquisition process and now are really just a part of the SmartBank brand.
That's a very true statement, and I do think that the Middle Tennessee market has changed a lot because of SmartBank coming in and taking it to the next level, which is always exciting. And I'm excited to see what the future is. Although I will say, Corey, this is not a scripted SmartBank podcast, so we can kind of depart a little bit from it. Very much sounds like we were doing this in our offices of SmartBank. So
that was a plug, and it's not 8:47 at night in our homes recording this away from the office.
So I'll ask one more question before we segue off of that. So I do want to touch on this because you mentioned it and I mentioned it in the intro, but you are the co-host of the Smart Voices podcast. You've had some great guests on there, and I'm not saying that because I was included. I don't feel like I'm the great guest, but there's been a wide variety of guests, and it's been neat to hear the different stories from associates that y'all have interviewed. So how did it come about?
Yeah, I think it's probably 4 or 5 years ago we brought up the idea. We've only done it for the last year, but 4 or 5 years ago, I think the idea originated. And as you know, working at the bank, everybody wears a lot of hats. We run things very lean, so a lot of ideas gets thrown out, but they don't always get executed at the time they get thrown out. So I think after a couple years of it kind of being mulled over and people talking back and forth about it within our HR team, I just decided to make it a priority this past year. And I think one of the biggest pushes is, we're spread out from Tennessee to Alabama to Florida. And one of my passions was around our folks that are in other locations that aren't really close to our corporate office or don't get a lot of corporate exposure, that love the brand, love the bank, love the community, the bank that we've kind of put together, but don't get to experience, once again, the corporate kind of exposure and the people within our corporate office that are great day in and day out, and at other locations too. So I think, the podcast was kind of this idea of how can we build community virtually in a way that's a little bit different and make people still feel connected to what we're doing at SmartBank and who people are. And I think bringing people on like yourself and others through the org has just been a really great opportunity to really bring people's personal life and who they are outside of banking. And I know we're going to get away from SmartBank. This is definitely not a plug for SmartBank, but I think I wanted folks to see that too. So many times people come to work and they see me as the learning and development person, or see you as the commercial lender in Tullahoma. And the reality is as people, we're so much more than that, right? I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, I'm a churchgoer, I'm a man of faith, I'm a pickleball player sometimes, right? I'm all these different things. And I think for whatever reason, culturally within work environments, people really just see other people as what their job is. And I think our identities and who we are is so much more complex than that. So I think it's an opportunity for people to feel connected to others by the things that they do in the bank, but also the things that they do, the things and who they are outside of the bank too, as well. In your story that you were able to jump on the podcast and kind of share, I think a lot of folks resonated with that. And you were definitely one of our best guests. So sorry the host wasn't as good as you, but we did enjoy having you on.
Oh, I thought the hosts were great, and you said some great stuff there, because I want to hit this before I forget. When we first transitioned, one of the biggest adjustments for me, I was in the main office of Southern Community Bank, so we were based in Tullahoma, and then we had branches outside of that, and it is a different world when you are in the main branch versus a branch away from I could walk upstairs and walk into the president's office and get him to sign a loan or whatever and move on. And you felt that connection because your departments were all based right there. And I will say that SmartBank's efforts to connect everyone, I think communication and having those avenues to make sure people stay connected. And you've played a vital role in that. There's others in the bank that have as well, in your department and other departments that have made it a priority to keep people connected, keep people informed. And those efforts obviously are appreciated by those of us that are out in the field, that aren't in that corporate office, sitting next door with, some of the leadership team. And so, I'll just say thank you for that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's very important. So
it's good.
Well, today's episode, now that we've gotten the introductions out of the way, and we're just so we're only like 2 minutes behind schedule. So, that's the focus. We're going to keep this thing on track. So today's episode, what we want to talk about, and I was not an early adopter of this, but I want to talk a little bit about AI and its future. I think I am one of those that was a little, it's weird because I am an early adopter in a lot of things. I want the latest phone. I want the latest technology. I want, whatever the newest gadget is. I enjoy features and technology. But when AI started to roll around, I was a little more hesitant. There's some AI that I embraced fully because it was already in my Apple, whatever ecosystem. But then you start throwing out these others like ChatGPT, and then there's, other iterations of that. I was not one of the ones that was in the test group to see how this was going to fly, because I don't know. I felt like it was, I don't know. And so Corey here is very into the AI area. So we were going to originally talk about culture, which who knows, maybe we'll have a follow-up episode where we do talk about bank and company culture. But he was demonstrating some AI technology to me last week when we were in a training session together, and blew my mind. And so immediately I go back and use AI to come up with an outline of things that we could talk about centered around AI itself. So if you're listening to this, a lot of the questions, a lot of the topics and conversation are fueled and started from AI's probing questions. So Corey, the first topic I want to hit is, AI in everyday life. I just want to talk a little bit about how AI is already integrated in a lot of our daily lives. And I think there's a lot of people out there that don't even realize that they're using some of the AI technology out there. And so I'd love to kind of get your input about how in your life, AI is incorporated, and also what are some areas where people may not realize in their personal life that they're using AI.
Yeah. I mean, while you were kind of leading us into this, I pulled up ChatGPT and just looking at my previous 7-day history. So I've got top kid-friendly hotels in Cincinnati, because we're considering taking a trip to Cincinnati maybe later this year. I've got a ton of work stuff in here too, but I have stuff for like church on different Bible study things that I've kind of asked or thrown in here. I've got meeting outline, stuff in here. I've got stuff. You're going to love this. I have stuff on flat earth.
Of course you do. This episode is not about flat earth.
This episode is not about flat earth. That's another episode.
That'll be a third episode.
But it's funny you ask about everyday life. Like my son does trick shots, right? He's 7 years old. He's really into trick shots. So like the other day I was asking ChatGPT about like a trick shot to put together for him that we could work on over the weekend. My brother-in-law uses ChatGPT at night when he puts his son to bed. He asks it to generate a story for him about whatever topic he picks. If he wants to pick, aliens or
that's genius.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, I mean, everyday life, people are using it in all different kinds of ways. I think everyday life, it's used similar to how we would use Google for the last, several decades, so to speak. I think folks are using it more in that light.
And I think that's it. The best way I can explain it to someone is it's kind of like Google on steroids. If you're talking about, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gronk is Twitter's version. All of these companies are coming out with their own version of AI technology. Apple's latest phone obviously has it. And so from that perspective, and I think AI, Siri was kind of a leading edge of that. Apple with Siri was trying to put something out there. It was kind of like a virtual assistant that you could, and I use Siri all the time. I would say, hey, Siri, which I don't mean to set people's phones off at this moment, but, I would use it to put a calendar reminder on. And I mean, you could say, remind me when I get to work tomorrow at 8 a.m. to make this phone call. And it would put it on my calendar and it would know when I got to work to remind me to make that phone call. And so you didn't necessarily have to put a time. You could put a location, which to me, that was cutting edge at the time. But to see where it's gone from there, I mean, you referred to it like it's almost going to make Google obsolete because people are going to start going to ChatGPT or to go to Copilot to pull, because I mean, you're going to get a wealth more knowledge and it's curated exactly. And what I've really been impressed with is how it's catered to your preferences. So it makes notes on your personal likes and it will adjust the responses based on that. So, I mean, it's insane to think where that is versus maybe even just 5 years ago. So,
yeah, the personalization's crazy. I mean, AI, all these tools we're talking about, I mean, they're based off what's called large language models, and large language data models has been around for a while. It's just large companies like Google and some of these other large data and tech companies have had them and had access to them. And my story of kind of getting into AI is a little bit different than yours. It was in the fall of 2023, kind of when this thing blew up, and it was when OpenAI had decided to basically launch ChatGPT and give this open source model for folks to hop on and basically put any prompt in that they wanted and access their large language model. And get those prompts. And that just kind of set all these tech companies off and has started this kind of the streaming effect, right? Like it used to just be Netflix and now it's Disney and Hulu and HBO. I mean, it's just, that is what has happened now with AI and all of these tools and kind of competitive edges that we're seeing, with the resources that have been given and accessible to the public now, which is scary. I sat in a panel last year and talked about AI, and someone asked from the crowd, is it like we gave a child a chainsaw without an off switch? And a guy that's way smarter than me that works at Oak Ridge National Lab here in East Tennessee was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, there's some scary sides of it, and I've got a section that we'll talk about toward the end of the podcast about maybe some of the controversies and concerns that are around AI. But yeah, I do think to see where it has evolved, just over the very recent past, like you were talking about, 2023 was when it kind of blew up with OpenAI. And ChatGPT was kind of the leading edge from the prompt perspective, where you would go and you would provide a prompt and it would give you responses. And I will say, from my experience in using some of the others like Copilot and others out there, I have found that ChatGPT is pretty solid with its responses. And it's crazy to me what it can come up with.
It's the best. I mean, of the other, of the others that I've played with or seen, I mean, it's the one that I like the most personally. So,
yeah. So I did. So before we move on to the next topic, I will say from my perspective, so I've been using ChatGPT for several months now, but not quite as fully as of late. And I did download Copilot on my phone. I didn't tell you this, but I got Copilot for work, which I'm excited about. I got that after last week. But then I realized that we have a Microsoft subscription for our own home that Mady and I share. And Copilot comes with that, obviously, since we have the subscription. And so now it's on my phone. And I've just thrown caution to the wind and said, who cares about, whether they're listening or watching. Oof. And so yesterday on the way home, I turned it on just to kind of play around with it. And there's a voice option where you can talk back and forth with one of 4 different voices that you like.
Oh, yeah.
And the entire way home, I was having conversation with a fake person, an AI, and was getting information of how to build this script for this podcast episode. I was asking it back and forth questions, and I would tell it what I liked, what I didn't like, and then it would adjust accordingly and put together an outline. It's crazy. And the fact that you could just talk to him like another person, like, I don't know.
It's wild. I mean, it really is. I just, not all of us have Teslas, James, but that's a pretty cool party trick there that you got.
It really is. So, well, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about how AI is being used in the workplace. And so this is in some ways a hot topic because there's some people that kind of push back on the use of AI in the workplace. But I think that it's interesting. And I think the question of, is it better to leverage technology that you have available at your fingertips or to kind of fumble your way through it? And so in your world, in the workplace, would you say a personal preference would be it's better for people to use AI to better their performance? Or would you say that it's a sign of weakness that they have to use AI to do so?
No, it's definitely a tool and resource, I think, to better their performance. I think a lot of folks are nervous about where AI is going to take us, right? And I know we'll get into controversies and challenges probably here in a little bit, but I think our team uses it every single day and multiple times. I mean, it's probably the top tool that our team uses. So internal communications falls under my kind of umbrella as well. We've got a internal communications manager, and I think where it's really, really sleek is helping craft and draft communication, whether that be via email or corporate communication or policy or procedure change, or, I mean, any type of communication. It's just incredible how you can utilize that tool to get the outcome or output that you want out of it from a communication standpoint. Some of the data analytics get a little iffy when you're trying to get data analytics out of it, but it's pretty solid, and we use it most for the communication, and that is really more around privacy and publicly traded information or consumer information that we just can't be putting into a into a model that's public. We try to refrain from some of those things, obviously. But communication is definitely the number one use case that we've seen at the bank, and everyone on our team uses it every day, multiple times a day, and it has changed the way that we work. I think it's helped us get more efficient. I think it's helped us think a little bit differently. It's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned communication, obviously, and then the efficiency side. I think both of those are areas that I've seen. I got the Copilot on Tuesday on my work computer, and a lot of times I have these thoughts of I need to send an email or I need to do this and just let someone know thank them for all that they're doing. But you and I and everybody else, we're all so busy. And sometimes I find myself, it's very difficult to sit down and take the time to, send just a quick note and say, hey, thanks for all that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so what's really neat is with Copilot, I went in, I saw that there was a little, part of the email. So I went in and started the email, and I just, I basically said, it snowed. This may have been Wednesday. We had snowed there. A lot of the team had come in, even though it was snowy, cold, icy. And I was like, drafted a quick email thanking the team for, coming in on this snowy, cold day and thank them for all that they do. I kid you not, like 4 to 5 sentences. It was perfect. I made like maybe 2 tweaks to it, and I sent it to our staff there in Tullahoma. And, it didn't change the heart that was there. Like my heart was to thank them. And so the use of AI to draft that didn't diminish the quality of what I was wanting to say. It actually enhanced it and made it, I feel like, more substantial. But that goes to the efficiency side where we don't have the time sometimes to do stuff, and it can do things that we can do, but maybe do it in a faster way. Or I love what you were talking about. It changes the way we think, because a lot of times I'll use it and lean on it to make sure there's not a better idea or a better way of saying things. And I know you've used that from time to time with emails. You can even use it to change the delivery method. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, about how it can help you word it in better ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that we didn't kind of unpack earlier is the use case that you had referenced, which is the HELOC application. So, I mean, we're sitting in a consumer lending training, and we've got one of our facilitators at the front of the room, and you and I are sitting at the back, and she's facilitating and working through the disclosure documentations, and realizes, man, while she's facilitating, she realizes, man, we really need to get a reference guide together for these disclosures, so that our associates, when they leave this training, they have a reference guide that tells them what each of the disclosures is when they go to a loan closing, so they can explain it to a client. And you and I are literally sitting in the back of the room, and within 5 minutes, we take a loan package, pop it in there, and say, generate a reference guide that gives definitions from a client perspective, and create a Word document on it, save it in this folder, upload it here, and it's done. Yeah. Before she can move on to the next segment, like it's already done, and it's there as a resource. So I think the use case like that is just, it's incredible. And when it comes to the personalization, back to kind of full circle on communication, it's learning your tone. The more information that you're giving it, the more prompts you're putting in. It's learning how you, the questions that you ask, the prompts you're putting in, how you craft your questions, how you craft your prompts. So it's learning your tone and your diction as you use it more, right? And as you do that, it knows you, and to your kind of segment there, the heart of who you are. So yeah, as it's generating those types of messages, as you put in those prompts, it sounds like you. And I think some folks are good at identifying, like I will say my chief people officer, Becca, that I mentioned earlier, there are times where an email will be sent and she'll be like, is this AI? And sometimes she's right. And sometimes she's wrong. So, she's not 100% on that, but I think we've got to be careful on some of those things, but it definitely, it's learning you as much as you're learning it, not to freak people out. But it's definitely learning you as much as you are learning it, and it's understanding your tone and diction so that it can give prompts that feel more like you and what you would say.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a little bit of the pushback or the concern that some people have is it's like it's going to know me better than I know myself, you know.
I mean, how many artificial intelligence movies have we seen that AI takes over the world? Like, yeah, we've
Yeah.
kind of seeded that in people's brains now. So
And
there's some fears there.
and then you got Tesla and Elon Musk, you know, that's creating the humanoids that are going to be, you know,
That's
helping everybody. It's going to be Jetsons, like.
episode 4. You're turning this into
There you go.
a
Yeah,
series now, James. You're
we won't
really
we won't hit that one too hard, but yeah, I like what you're saying, and it is something that it's very important. I think that it is consistent with what the feel is of the person delivering the message.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, you talked about the disclosures. You know, that information lives in my head as a 20-year lender. You know, I go through a closing with those packages, and I don't think twice about those forms and disclosing them to the client and tell them exactly what each of those are. But, you know, for someone that's new to lending or who hasn't, you know, done that in the past and they're just getting into that, they do need those guides. And to take, like, it would have taken you and I probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times as long to sit down and me go through every document with you and explain, this is what I say to the client when I am having them sign this document. And then you would have to take that information and, you know, curate it in a format that would be like a guide. It probably would take several hours versus, you know, a matter of less than 10 minutes to pump those documents in and get at least a draft out that you can tweak the way you want it. So it's impressive. It is. It's crazy. Impressive and crazy. So.
And we do a lot of curating content, not just from a communication standpoint, but, you know, different PowerPoint decks and, you know, learning content that we're putting together. And it's getting scary good at images. Early on, it had all these like 6 or 7 fingers on hand, some weird stuff like that when it generate image, but it is starting to get scary good at generating images. And there's all these kind of ad hoc tools that different companies are making money off of and creating that are very niche areas that they're now selling to curate content, video content, image content, all of it. So it's absolutely wild. There's another statistic on a prompt called, this may freak your viewers out a little bit, but it's I learned this early on that if you tell it in the prompt to take a deep breath, it actually increases the accuracy. There was a study done, it increases the accuracy of the response that it gives you if you tell it to take a deep breath, which is just terrifying.
So I'm curious from your HR perspective, how do you see AI shaping the customer interaction specifically, like between our associates or any company's team members and the customers that they're interacting with? How do you see AI kind of shaping those interactions?
Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned earlier, everyday life. How are we maybe using it and not realizing we're using it? Like, one is chat bots. I mean, there are so many chat bots that are consumer chat bots that we don't realize as we interact with, you know, your local coffee shop or your cable company or, you know, anybody that you basically do business with as a consumer. Like, a lot of these, especially these larger organizations that have tons of resources and investment in these things. I mean, you're interacting with AI so much more than you realize with them. But I think from the HR standpoint, you know, we're seeing there are some scary things, you know, on how people are using it and what they're putting in, privacy information, some of those challenges that we have. And I think SmartBank's done, you know, not to make another quick plug for the bank, but I think we've done a really good job. We basically shut ChatGPT down but then took a pilot team and allowed some of our associates to have licenses to Copilot within our kind of ecosystem, so to speak, so that they can still put in, private information, and it still kind of live within our large language model within Copilot based on those access and security parameters, so to speak. So I think that's the right approach for us now, because in HR, there's a lot of terrifying things of people putting stuff. I mean, you think you could, here's a use case, right? Like in HR, we could take salary data and put it in and ask for some budget information back based on market trends or things like that. But we would have to give up private information to get that information back. You start putting that in public, ChatGPTs or those large language models that are public and accessible, that is a huge issue. And there's some companies that, a lot of larger companies are shutting it down, but some of these smaller ones, I'm sure people are doing that and no one in the organization even knows it.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think that is the one word of caution that I would extend to anybody listening, and you hit the nail on the head, is there's a lot of these things that are still open source. They're still, public, and in many ways people can see the information. And so the great thing about Microsoft and Copilot being part of, like you said, that ecosystem, is it's kind of the same as if you're emailing things back and forth. It's all within encryption and all part of the corporation technology IT world. But if you're going out on ChatGPT's website and you're throwing, customer personal information out there, that's probably not the best idea, and would probably encourage you to steer away from that, because you never want to be the reason that someone's identity or anything fraud related takes place because of a lack of privacy or sharing of data. So,
and I think that's one of the controversies and challenges around AI is the fraud use case, and we experience that at the bank, and you see that across. I mean, the fact that people can spoof other people's voices now and numbers, and it's wild. It absolutely wild, the level of fraud, even in Tullahoma. I mean, that you guys are seeing, right? Mm-hmm. In that kind of market, the craftiness of people to utilize this kind of technology across all footprints of the bank or of our markets is just, it's wild.
Yeah, and technology itself, not just AI specifically, but
sure.
As technology advances, unfortunately, criminals advance as well. And I will say that from our perspective, we have the fraud department based in Tullahoma, so I get to have a lot of conversations with that team. And I'll be honest, the stories that I hear from them, it's almost like technology is this double-edged sword. We make it more convenient and easier to do business for certain, for our clients. But then on the other side, your criminals that are the ones committing the fraud and taking advantage of individuals have that same technology at their disposal, if not more, to be able to take advantage of someone. And that is a real legitimate concern. Mm-hmm. And I think it will continue to be moving forward. And that's why it's so important that people are protecting their privacy, making sure, that they're, going through the proper steps to use caution. I usually can, within about 30 seconds of hearing what someone's going through, identify whether that is something they should probably just walk away from.
Sure.
But I'm also not prideful enough to say that I couldn't fall victim to that as well. I have seen some pretty believable things that turned out to be, not true at all or fraudulent. And so now that we're on the topic, let's just go ahead and move on into that, because that was the next category. No. I'm glad you did. So, how do you view someone that's leveraging AI's capabilities versus doing it on their own? I know we talked about that. You think that that's okay, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
not from a criminal standpoint. Let's throw that, since that's what we were just talking about. But back to just your everyday associate or person that's leveraging its capabilities. fully support that and think that's a great thing.
I think the disclaimers use it with caution, just like kind of what you were alluding to there. I mean, private information about yourself, even, throwing that, into the stratosphere, so to speak, of ChatGPT. Those are just not wise decisions, as you navigate putting prompts in. So, but yes, I mean, it is a tool that is very helpful. And I think, to your earlier point, replacing Google in some instances. I mean, that's anecdotal. I don't have any data to kind of back that up, but I do have data that shows that their subscriber rate or subscription login rate or whatever, it skyrocketed as soon as ChatGPT kind of came about, and it moved quicker than all the mega social platforms like your Facebooks and Instagrams and YouTube and everything that's out there. I mean, it skyrocketed. And I remember back to the 2023 when it came out, I had a neighbor they were having dinner with us, and he was like, "Have you heard about this thing?" And I was like, and he works in the motorcycle industry. Like, he's not even in a corporate gig, or like, we'll just say this, he's not around a computer a lot. That's Gotcha. What I'll say. Like, he's a smart dude, but he's blue collar, work with his hands.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Have you heard about this thing?" And I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he said, "Kids are using it to draft papers for them in college."
I had heard
and
about that.
That was my introduction into what ChatGPT and these large language models were. And it's just crazy, from there to where we are today, how quickly that's picked up. And it's just a topic everywhere, every conference, every workplace, everywhere on social media, on, any work platform, LinkedIn. I mean, it is just a topic everywhere.
It's definitely a hot topic too. I mean, everybody wants to hear about it. They want to know about it. They want to know what their version is of it.
Yeah.
When we were at Encino Insight last year, that was one of the biggest hot topics was their AI technology to help you, and it was a really, cool feature because you could essentially put your, bank policy documents out there. And instead of having to go dig through, 200 pages of policy, you just ask the question and it would tell you. And so
Yep.
It's crazy. You did touch on it though, and I want to get back to it because I thought it was interesting. So what would your thoughts be if, this is controversy wise, do you think a student should be able to draft an essay to turn into school for a grade using AI, ChatGPT, whatever?
Well, what's crazy is, they've now kind of back to the fraud piece that we were talking about earlier. Companies are using AI to fight AI. So, all these colleges and high schools, they have AI plagiarism tools now. And that came out pretty quickly after, I think, several students started using it as a resource. So they've got, percentage of plagiarism when those associates, they've got to put it through a funnel, or those students have to submit those papers now, and it goes through that funnel, and they see the percentage of plagiarism and AI within it. So
I guess I didn't realize they were fighting it with AI. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, no, that's not okay. Come on.
So do you think there should be regulations and guidelines maybe for companies, that are implementing the use of AI? Do you think there should be some guidance there, or at least, you know what I mean?
Oof. This is not a political podcast, but with Musk, you just wonder what kind of take this next election is going to have on any type of AI regulation. I mean, we're seeing, and I wish I had some of the specific scenarios around it, but I mean, we're seeing lawyers use AI and reference cases that do not exist. So there's also there's this controversial conversation around the validity of AI, right? And how accurate it is. And that's another plug that I would give, and kind of disclaimer I would give along with the fraud pieces. I tell our team 80% is what it's going to get you. Like it's going to get us 80% of the way.
Yeah, it's not going to do the whole job.
Don't you ever prompt something, copy and paste it and send it. Don't ever do that. That's kind of a no-no for us. So it's going to get us 80% of the way. And that's kind of our disclaimer on that.
I think that's a good way to look at it. And from the regulatory side, I think that, when you think regulations, that's obviously more from the state and federal level, but guidelines wise, I think each company, and it sounds like we both agree on that. I think each company should probably set some safety guidelines, keep some rails there just to make sure that the team that's utilizing those tools is using it in the safest and best way of practicing for sure.
Yeah. And more are. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually, today at work, I had to sign a user policy update for an AI policy. So we have one now. And, companies are taking a multitude of approaches with it. Some are just shutting everything down and they don't need a policy because they're telling everybody you're not going to have access to it. Don't try to get on it, and they're shutting everything down. And I think those are going to be laggards. I really do. I think they're late to the efficiency game. They're late to productivity, and then others are behind it, and they're allowing people to have access, and they're not educating themselves, or others are putting any policy or regulation around it within their orgs. And then there's this middle ground, which I think is kind of where we're at, where it's like, hey, let's not be so terrified of this, but let's not just go open range and give everybody the keys to the kingdom to maybe tear everything down. So that's kind of the approaches that we're seeing across different workforces.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a very smart approach. SmartBank is smart. I had to throw that one in there.
Well done.
But yes, it sounds like we both agree, in a good, safe manner, have some guidelines, have some policies in place that protect you and your organization. And I do like the fact that you keep it restricted to a group of individuals that know the rules, that can abide by those. It's not a free range type thing where just everybody can go, wild west with it. So I think that's some great approaches in the workplace side. Let's move into one more section before we go to the rapid fire, and that's kind of the future trends of AI and where we kind of see it going. And I kind of want you to, I really want you to imagine where you see this going. So in the next 5 to 10 years, what are some of the things that you think we might possibly see from AI? And they may be completely unbelievable to us today, but if you were a prophet and you could project 5 to 10 years out, what do you think AI could evolve to?
It's going to be general in terms, but I think that it will be more significant than we realize. I think from a work standpoint, I think people's what they do will absolutely change. How they do their work will change. I'm not sure that it's going to, there's a lot of data out there, I guess prophets or economists that think it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's just going to change the way that we do work. There's a lot of fears around critical thinking and whether it's really hindering critical thinking. But when you think about that, you're entering a question. And asking the right questions is critical thinking. Some of the best critical thinkers know how to ask the right questions. And that's really what is what these large language models are teaching us, is how to ask the right questions more and more and more and more and more and more and more. So we're growing in our competency to do that as we interact with these models. But you're going to see more regulations around it, just like how we had talked about. I think that's going to grow in the next 5 to 10 years, and you're going to see more orgs buckle down and get more formalized with it. But I think you're going to see a ton of efficiencies, and I think it's going to affect all industries. It's going to affect...
That was one of my questions, is what industry specifically, or if it would be across the board?
The big ones. I mean, it's already affecting auto, healthcare, banking, finance. I mean, those are big ones that are mass.
Technology companies.
Technology. Yeah. I mean, it's been impacting tech for a really long time. I think retail. I think basic retail, how you interact as a consumer with basic retail, that is just going to continue to evolve.
Yeah, because retail's shifted more to an online presence anyway. I mean, there's still brick and mortar buildings, obviously, but I would argue that the majority of shopping that most people are doing today, they've at least at one point gone on a website, researched what they want. They may still go into the store and buy it because they want to get it at that moment versus waiting a day or 2 days if you're Amazon to get it. But I think that, yes, that level of, research and trying to decide what you want. And then going to the website. I mean, if you go to any retail website today, there's usually some level of an AI built into it that you can communicate with and, tell it what you're looking for. So
Yeah.
One last question in this section here is do you think that there's ways that employees can future-proof their careers in a more AI-driven economy? So are there ways that they can still show value and worth even in an economy that's more focused in that AI world? Someone that maybe there's still certain things out there, like you're going to have your oil changed, you're going to have your tires rotated. Those are things that
Sure.
AI is not going to do for us today. But
Maybe.
those at some point we get the Tesla robots, maybe that'll happen.
Yeah.
But there's still a level of, we back to the concerns that exist. Are there things that people can do today to prepare for that AI driven economy to make sure that they still can have value, have worth, and have a job?
Yeah, I mean, I think interact with it with caution, grow your education towards it. I think one of the other changes that is maybe not as hot of a take is the impact it's going to have on our psychology and society. We've seen with the increase of streaming, with the increase of virtual interaction, with the increase of cell phone technology and texting and social media platforms, suicide rates are up, depression's up. All these things are up when it comes to the social being of what a human is, and the healthiness of mental health conversations are hot topics, and those are, I mean, that's new within the last 5 to 10 years. We weren't talking about mental health so much, and we are now. And AI is absolute. I mean, you think about it. Some of the things I'm asking it, I would have to go ask you or my dad or another coworker or someone else that had the experience or the knowledge, and now I have it at my fingertips.
Yeah.
What do we think that does to someone's psychology? What do we think that does to someone's social interaction with people and kind of how we learn and grow and really build relationships? So that's not as hot of a take, I think, that people are talking about, but I think there is going to be a huge impact there in regards to people preparing themselves. I think interact with it, but man, people are always going to do the work. And I was in Austin a couple weeks ago at an HR and L&D conference. And I mean, these are large companies that are way further along than we are at SmartBank at their adoption of AI and technology, where I'm talking about Disney and Johnson & Johnson and IKEA. I mean, Walmart, large companies. And every single one of them was like, you have to remember it's all about people. Like they all said that. Like, AI is here, it's coming, it's advancing, but it is all about people. Do not forget that. As soon as you lose that, everything's up for grabs.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Let's see here. It's time for the
I'm dragging it out. Sorry, James.
No. That was great. And I think that it's great advice, because I do think that one of the things that we teach at SmartBank, to go back to SmartBank here, one of our core values is embrace change. And I think from what I'm hearing and from my perspective, with AI in the future, for those individuals that may be a little concerned, I would say embrace the change, embrace the future when it comes to that stuff. Learn how you can leverage it to grow your knowledge and your abilities.
Yeah.
I am very much a DIYer. I do a lot of stuff myself.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody, I have learned how to do almost everything I do either through Google or YouTube.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT, Copilot, all of those are just one more tool that I can use I mean, it's helping me build a podcast. It's
Yeah.
helping me build a website currently for my drone and real estate photography. I mean, those are things that I don't know how to do, but you know
Yeah.
what? You just learn how to do it. So leverage the technology and the AI with safe, obviously, approaches.
Yeah.
And just continue to grow your knowledge. And I think
Yeah.
you'll future proof yourself for sure.
It helped me how to code. I mean, we built some websites on SharePoint, and it helped me. I mean, I have zero coding background, and I just spent days in it trying to figure out what to do and how to do it, and it helped me. And I'm still not a coder, but we built a website, and when it breaks, I can ask ChatGPT to help me fix it, and it will. So,
see, there you go. So my wife was one of the early adopters for coding websites. Her and her cousin did that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mandy and Tyler. We were talking about that when I was building this website that I'm working on right now, supposedly hopefully go live in the next week or so.
Yeah.
But they were telling me they were the original kind of, they'd go in with the I don't know, it's C++. I don't know what the coding stuff is, but anyway, they did all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this website I'm building right now, I'm literally dragging and dropping pictures where they go. And you know, the text fields, like that's what I need.
The way. That's the way, man.
I'm probably paying a premium to do that, but you know what?
Yeah.
It's making my life a whole lot easier. So,
but to articulate, I think it's the things that you're talking about too. It's like this next generation and the future trends as technology skills increase and people are focused on that. What we're seeing is those soft skills are decreasing, right?
Yes.
And there's less of a focus on that. And that's almost to younger listeners or to those that are concerned about it, I would say those soft skills are really they're going to matter. They're going to matter even more in the next they really matter now. And you feel it when you walk into Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Starbucks or wherever, and you're like, why are they so rude? I don't remember them being rude 15, 10 years ago. Like, why are they so awful now? Well, the soft skills, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing that decrease.
That's a good point. I mean, you're not having to deal with that as much because you got this to do it for you. So,
yep.
Well, let's move into the rapid fire section. I'd like to throw 10 questions at you. All but one of these are AI centered. I had to throw one in here last minute just because I want to get it on the record.
Did you do this while we were on the pod to add the last one?
I made one change while we were on the pod, but
oh, great! Can't wait.
I have 10 questions. 9 of them are AI focused, and I will ask you: are you ready?
Yeah, man. Let's do it. Yes, no, right?
Yes, no. We'll elaborate on any if you want to go back and circle to them, but we'll try to keep it to yes, no.
Yep.
First question is the one that I changed here. So, is the Earth flat?
No.
Well, at least it's on record now.
It's on record.
Do you think AI will create more jobs than it eliminates?
Yes.
Have you ever used ChatGPT or another AI tool for work?
Yes.
Would you trust an AI to help make a hiring decision?
Not fully. We can come back to that. I'm going to say no right now.
Okay. Do you believe AI should be regulated more strictly?
Yes.
Have you ever been surprised by how well AI understood something?
Yes.
Would you prefer an AI-powered personal assistant or a human one?
A human. I think a human.
I didn't know where you were going to go with that because for me as an extroverted person, like I would still want a human.
Yeah.
But I could see introverts and golds answering that very differently. So
yeah, I want a human.
Okay. Us blues though, we need that person. So shout out to Devon. Me and Devon, we need that person. So.
There you go. I hope he's listening, man. That's a cool dude right there.
We'll have to make sure. Yeah, he is a cool dude. We're gonna have to make sure he listens. Let's see here. Do you think traditional college degrees will become less relevant due to AI?
Absolutely.
I actually agree with that, and I'm speaking as someone who has no college degree. So, number 9 is: have you ever used AI generated content without realizing it?
Probably, yeah. Yes.
Here's the last one. Are you ready for this one?
Yeah.
Would you ride in a fully autonomous, driverless car without hesitation?
Yes, I would now.
There you go. The keyword driverless. You've been in one that's driver controlled. So
yeah, I would now. It freaked me out the first time I got in with you, though. I will say that.
I told you need to come to Tullahoma, and I need to let you drive it. And like I said, I'm going to take you down the road behind the bank that everybody drives it down, and we'll see if you make it through the curve. Everybody grabs the steering wheel and doesn't let it do it. So
I'll just close my eyes.
Well, I don't know. You might not. So
when I close my eyes, will it ding and make me touch it?
It'll flash at you and yell at you.
Will it go around the curve or no?
It will go around the curve. It'll go around the curve. So
okay,
but you can't.
We do need to do that.
You should. Next time you're Tullahoma, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything you want to hit back on that we've talked about?
Oh man,
that you can.
I'm trying to remember all your yes nos. Let's
see the one that you did. Would you trust AI to help make a hiring decision? You said that was one we could circle back to. I'd be curious. You said probably not today.
Probably not fully. Definitely. Actually, you know what? Definitely not fully. But I would leverage it for some information and a part of the screening or the filtering out process. So, I mean, from a scale standpoint, you have 100 applicants. AI is a great tool and resource to narrow that thing down to 5. So
yeah, when if you have certain criterias that you're looking at that will eliminate certain applicants, I do think that's where it could be used to help in, like you said, kind of weeding down that list. But to make the final say, I do think you and I both know this, but until you sit in front of that person and get to know them one-on-one, it's really, I mean, people can look good on paper. They can even sound good in a phone interview. But a lot of times when you get them in front of you, you learn more about them. And
we do have a rule at the bank, and it is you have to come and see us in person before we say yes to make an offer. So
it's a good rule.
That's every position within the bank. We've used to not have that rule, and we've learned from that. I'll just say that. So we do a really good job now, I think. Yeah,
and I'm that way at the bank, and I've told Amanda and some of the other staff at Tullahoma, and I've told you this. I can usually tell within about 30 seconds to a minute of interacting with someone if they have the customer service piece that they need for, say, a retail position that we're looking to hire. You know, and not saying that people can't learn to do better in that world, but there's some things you just can't teach, and some people just have certain gifts naturally to communicate with individuals. And I can think of one individual at the bank. I wish I had her patience and demeanor in escalated situations. I'm not that person, unfortunately. So I can be pushed to a point where I probably get frustrated and react in ways that may not be the best. But I witnessed multiple times, escalated situation, high intensity, and her demeanor through the entire thing was, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's see if we can get to a resolution. It's like she knew it was not her fault, and she did, diffusing the situation was incredible. And so those are the things that I say you can't teach certain things, and you find those traits and qualities when you're in front of that person. And that's where I don't think AI will ever be able to filter that kind of stuff.
It won't. We'll always need people. I mean, there are some tasks that can be fully autonomous, right, from an AI standpoint, but there's experience and a lot that you just can't absorb and obtain. We were wired for people. We were wired, introvert or extrovert, like we were wired for people. I mean, I agree. How we were wired. The other one I was thinking about is the college one. So, and I do have a stat on that I think you'd find interesting. So back to that Austin conference, they gave some data on degrees. More than 500 private colleges have closed in the last decade.
Wow.
And job postings without a degree listed has increased 400% in the last 5 years. So that is already changing, where we are seeing a lack of degree requirements for positions.
Well, in the degree requirement, like I understand having a baseline there, but I do think there should be some flexibility. And that's what's been so great for, my career. And I'll ask you this question. If someone was standing in front of you and you're looking to hire someone for the bank and they've got 20 years of banking experience versus a 4-year college degree and no banking experience, I mean, I feel like that's a no-brainer.
10 out of 10 every time.
You
Experience
don't want
always wins.
You don't want to eliminate that experience just because you have a criteria that requires a degree in place.
Yeah.
And so I think as long as there's some flexibility, obviously, there's certain restrictions that you got to abide by, discriminatory things. You got to make sure you're being fair there. Yeah. But I think if you can mitigate the reason why you're not requiring something like that, obviously 20 years of experience being one of those, that's a perfect example of that. But I love that answer. I mean, you were affirmative on the yes, it will. And then to tell us about the Austin conference and the stats, that's mind blowing to me. I can't believe it's gone down that much. That's crazy.
Just the last 5 years. So, I mean, it's already happening. Don't go to school. Don't do it, kids.
My kid would cheer you on for that statement. He is out and he is not going for snow related this week. He went 1 day and 5 days this week, and he is celebrating very well tonight with his nan. So he does not have to go to school tomorrow. So
it's a good time.
Well, Corey, I really appreciate you taking the time and the effort and energy it took to get to the microphone and the camera tonight. And I'm glad we finally got this together. I'm hopeful that the recording actually worked. So no, it did. But I want to give you a chance. Is there anything that you'd like to share as far as if anybody wants? I know you're not a social media person, but as far as LinkedIn, if someone wants to follow you, listener wants to follow you, I guess they can find you there on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I try to be slow on my approach to social media and not be too engaged in it. I didn't talk too much about personal life, but I've got 3 kids that are young, 2, 5, and 7, and try to just give them as much attention as I can when I'm at home. So, but I am on LinkedIn and Corey Burdette on LinkedIn if you want to look me up. And I post from time to time, and we'll look through things. So, yeah. Look me up. Love to connect and love to meet you. So connect with me and look me up.
That's awesome. And yes, thanks to your family for extending. I appreciate and respect you heavily for your position on that. I love the fact that you are a great family guy. I think that's one of the reasons why we grew a bond pretty quickly as we worked together over the last few years more closely with some projects. And there are a few people in the organization that I feel like I could pick up the phone and call in any situation and have a conversation, and I would definitely put you in one of those. So thanks to everything you do in the working world, but also in the personal world, and being a good coworker, but also a really good friend to me. So I appreciate it.
The feeling's mutual, and this was a lot of fun. Sorry I ran long for you, but thanks for having me on.
No, we're good. I appreciate all the conversation. I think it was a great talk. I hope the listeners enjoy it. And before we wrap up, I just want to say, if you want to follow the podcast, you can follow the podcast on all the major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple. You can also follow us on social media at on.pace on Instagram, the On Pace Podcast on Facebook. And then you can follow me personally on Instagram at Fuller Runs, and also YouTube at Fuller Runs. And that's where you can see the video content and Corey and I staring at each other for the last hour. But would love to have you following on all those. The last thing I will say is, if you will help us grow this podcast, there is a way you can do that. There's a couple of things. One, you can share the podcast. There's also a way to leave a rating and a review on both Spotify and Apple. So whatever platform you listen on, if you'll scroll down while you're listening or later, go down, leave a rating, leave a review. Hopefully it's a 5-star, and help us grow the podcast that way. There is one other thing that was recently added that I'll share. Buzzsprout, my podcast host, added a feature to where you can support the show. So if you would be interested in supporting the show monetarily, you can do so with just a small monthly contribution. Or if you want to make a contribution, just a one-time contribution, reach out to me on any of the social media platforms or by email at the On Pace Podcast at iCloud.com, and I'll share Venmo or whatever you want to support the show. And anybody that does choose to support the show, obviously we'll mention those on later episodes. So thanks so much for listening to this episode. Thanks, Corey, for being a guest. Until next time, I hope you have a great day. Take care.
That was fun, dude.